everybody, and welcome into the Media Tavern, where two guys just shoot the breeze about stuff they like. My name is Eric Oblander. I'm here today with my good friend Todd Stanton. Together, we make two total media nerds who not only make media, but also watch and listen to just about everything that you can get your hands on.
That is true.
Yes, I'm a musician. Todd's a musician. I'm in a band. I've traveled the world. I've made a bunch of records. I went to college, learned how to do video production. Here I am. The whole way I've been a film and TV kind of maven.
Yeah, same deal. I love movies and music. I'm a musician. I write and record music. I've done several songs and albums through the years that no one's ever heard of. And then I, as a hobby, I make, like fun little films. Back wall here. If you're only listening, you can't see it, but these are some award-winning 48-hour films that we've done. And but I do video production for a living, so it's a lot of media all the time.
The purpose of this show isn't necessarily to be some geniuses or some experts who critique stuff. We really just love to talk about and kind of shoot the breeze about the latest thing we saw. Maybe it's some classic film or cool old record or great TV show, whatever it is, some new movie that we really want to just rap about and just kind of get into it.
That's how this whole thing got started. I mean, you and I met, I think last year, I think it was, right? And every time we get together, we talk about the latest movie we've seen, and we will talk an hour on a particular movie, and we just decide, you know what, we need to record this. And
we're so good at this. We
entertain ourselves. We could entertain someone else.
Yes, our opinions are so valuable. We need to share them with the world.
Well, they are. We really do feel they're valuable. So might as well get them recorded for posterity's sake, and then hopefully somebody will enjoy them. So, what movie are we talking about?
If I were to make a top 10 list of my favorite movies of the year, maybe even a top 5 list, this movie's going on it. We're talking today about Zach Cregger's Barbarian. I saw, and then I told Todd to watch it, and he watched it, and now he's watched it 4 times. So
3 times.
Well, yeah.
Don't get crazy on me.
I went into this movie not knowing anything at all. And as I started to watch it, my brain was going in 10 different directions. I guess let's talk about kind of the overview of the movie first. This Barbarian's a movie based in Detroit. By the way, spoiler alerts coming for anyone who's not seen Barbarian. I don't know why you'd be listening to this and not have seen it if you're going to watch it.
If you haven't seen the movie, I would suggest maybe not listening to this first.
Yeah.
But if anything,
something else.
Yeah, maybe cut out here and just go watch the film and then come back and listen.
Yeah, we're talking about other stuff later down the road. And we'll hopefully put stuff in the notes so you can skip ahead. But a woman is in Detroit for a job interview. She goes to a kind of not a bed and breakfast, but Airbnb. Thank you. She goes in there. Someone has already been kind of in there. Another patron is there, staying there, which is Peter Skarsgård. Bill Skarsgård, sorry. And they get together. Things happen. And from there, it goes completely sideways in many different directions without even being able to kind of like quantify it in like a 1-minute elevator pitch. But essentially, something not right is happening in the area. And it continues to go south from there.
I stayed away from the film initially, and it piqued my attention, but the title is kind of macabre, I mean, it feels a little like over the top title, and I love horror films, but I'm always afraid I'm going to see something that I'm going to regret that I've seen. Take for instance, I'll just give you like a little bit of like where I'm at with horror films. I love Alien. I love the original Halloween. I love anything that has like a thriller thing to it, any kind of like serial killer, pursuant type movie. I love all that stuff. But I'm not into slasher films, and I'm not into anything that's like overly gory, unnecessarily gory, or sadistic. And so the title felt kind of sadistic of sorts. Barbarian. I mean, that sounds so. What are you getting yourself into? And as I told Eric earlier. A movie like the type of movie I would never go see is Human Centipede. Like its whole theme, and if you know anything about what's depicted in that movie, it's nothing I want to see. It's nothing that I want to like have up here, you know. So when I saw this film or the trailer, and you see this woman going down into this scary, you know, basement thing, I just thought, I don't know. And then you got the guy from It, for God's sake, and he's living in this house, and this doesn't seem like a good film to watch at all. So if you're still listening, listener out there, this is nothing like I thought it was going to be. It's a great thrill ride, and I wound up laughing at one point at how the film opens up and it sets up this whole like how odd the basement is, and I just started laughing at the layers and layers of things that happen in this basement, and I just thought, oh my God, is this great? This is so, I love feeling on the edge, and I don't know, I just thought it was such a great setup.
The thing about this movie that I love the most is that you think it's one thing and then it's not. And then it's totally something else. And then you think it's that and it's not that. But it's not like tricky, like it's not cheap tricks. It's like it's not really well.
It's not like a puzzle or anything.
And it's not really, I mean, it's really well planned, but not like manipulative. I mean, in a bad way. Like manipulative meaning like, I mean, they're not. Okay, so
it's not a Christopher Nolan film. Let's
well, yeah. So let's say first things first. What did you like? What did you think about the movie?
When I first saw it, I was like I said, I was laughing. The whole basement scene and how it just continues to evolve. I just thought, wow, this is masterful. I mean, this whole to like lure you in and to lure our character in, and our character acts exactly like you would, you know, at one point.
That's one of the things that it really seems how humans would be. Like you would be overwhelmed and kind of freaked out. You wouldn't make the right decision, but you'd be like really defensive, and you'd be kind of like have your antennas up when someone's there. And that's kind of a throw off, is you think because of when Bill Skarsgård's there, that like he's the guy. Like you think that he's going to be the linchpin of this whole thing, and that you're like, oh shit, this guy's, you know, like going to do something.
He's the it guy. He's the
it guy. And so as it goes, you know, you soon find out that he's not. But the way that they unveil his, I guess I can go ahead and spoil like that his demise.
Yeah,
sort of kicks off the movie almost. It's almost like there's like a 35-minute or half an hour intro to the movie in which Bill gets his head crushed by a giant naked lady, and then and then from there we're off to the races, and an immediate smash cut of epic proportions that I absolutely thought was one of the coolest things I've seen in movies in 10 years.
It completely messes with your sensibilities on the whole thing. You think you're going into, for myself, I mean, I've shown the film to my kid and my wife, and how they reacted to it is not what the director was intending. I think the director specifically hired Bill Skarsgård.
Well, and there's definitely something like lurking under the bottom, but there's not. Like,
and there is. Yeah. I mean, he even says at one point, you know, what do I look like, a monster? And I just, oh my, you're playing right off of the whole It thing. I mean, I think is genius. And then you just don't know what to think of him. And then even right up to where, like you said, his demise, when he's crawling on the floor there, you're thinking, oh my God, he is a creepy dude. There's something wrong. And then you don't even trust him in that moment. He's like, somebody bit me. And you're like, don't go that way. Go
super like, it seems like it's like this long con to get.
Yeah. And then he dies. And then as soon as he dies, the thing screams, and we do this drastic cut.
Yeah, the smash cut right to Justin Long driving on like Pacific
this
Highway.
Reggae music, and it just messes with you. You're just like,
so that's the thing that I think that Zach Cregger did great here, is getting Justin Long, who's kind of been like almost like regimented to like these like, like
the
American
dorky
Pie
guy
type. Well,
Yeah.
but these like really lame, like zany comedies that are kind of adult, whatever. And he's
Yeah.
kind of been, but like I always think that like I'm of very like I think that sometimes the best bad guys are played by like comedians.
Mhm.
Like I always thought that Chris Farley would in one movie could play a great heavy. I don't mean that pun intended. Like I mean like I think he could play a really good psycho or bad guy. It comes up often, but when you meet Justin Long, you have no idea why we're all of a sudden on like in like a convertible flying down the road.
Yeah, listen to reggae music. I mean,
his life is going great, but then you get to see his life unravel in like 2 seconds when he gets that phone call, which is also great.
And again, you don't even know what does this have to do with anything. And then a line is said that, always got the properties in Michigan that he can.
Yeah. And then it ties it together, but that's such a great long thread, man. It's like, you're like, so basically, continuing on with the plot, he gets a call from his agent that he'd just gotten this TV show, but there's been he's an actor. He's just got this TV show. There are some allegations that have come up against him pretty hardcore, like kind of Me Too movement, sexual issues. And he all of a sudden snaps from he's got the world on a string in his hand to like his world is unraveling and he needs to scramble. And you find out it comes to pass that he's got properties he's got properties in Michigan. I suppose we should mention back to the original thing, back to the house. So it's unveiled that there is a crazy secret passage in this house. There's a basement, then there's a secret passage in the basement, and they continue to go down and they continue to go down. She goes after Bill Skarsgård. That's when he gets killed by this mysterious giant naked lady. I forgot to mention that, like that's the whole point, is that there's like basically a dungeon down there. Also in one of the rooms, you see like a video camera and a really gross bed. And it's just really dark and a bummer. So,
bad things happen there.
Yes, right. So anyway, so back to the Justin Long thing. So he's, it's been revealed that he's got these properties, and that's kind of like where you can kind of all of a sudden see the pieces come together. But now we're like halfway through the movie, so it's awesome because it's like, what is happening?
Yeah, and that drastic turn again made me laugh. I mean, it was just like, this director knows what he's doing. He is deliberately manipulating your reaction to all this. And I love it. It's like he's going to put that super hardcore, intense scene out of your mind for a minute, and we're going to go to something else, something completely different. And you're like, you almost like gasp at how that changes so quickly. And I love it. And then it comes back. And Justin Long always kind of plays this comic relief, tension reliever, comic guy in most of the stories. And I guess in a way he's supposed to be like the everyday man kind of reaction to things that seem odd. Even his whole, the things that he finds in the house that we've already found. Saw the basement. We saw the door that opens with the rope. We see the tunnel that goes into this cavern.
And this is where you start to really understand. Like, so at first you're kind of like, maybe these allegations aren't true and that he's a decent guy. And then as he arrives at this house that's like totally fucked up. Yeah. Pardon my French. He comes in and
all he's concerned about is selling it.
Yeah, he's concerned about selling it, and he finds his way to this basement, and he's just measuring all the stuff for added value to the house with an actual tape measure.
And he didn't know anything about. He didn't know. So
yeah, he had no idea.
House, but he didn't know there was the secret room or the bed with the camera. And he's like totally ignoring that. He's like, oh, this is more square footage, and he's like, and then he finds the tunnel, and he's like, oh, and he like measures that, and it's just
some people really bumped up against that part and thought it was a little too goofy, a little too like zany.
I could see how it would be, because it does take quite a turn, especially for a horror film, And I think maybe if you're not a fan of Justin Long, it could come across as a little wacky, but I felt it worked.
Yeah. So then I guess, essentially kind of finds his way to Georgina Campbell and Mama, which is the giant mom.
Naked lady
mom. And he ends up, I think from here is where he, either before or after this scene, is where he kind of like meets up with his buddy in Detroit and basically spills the beans about what a horrible jackass he is in real life.
Yeah.
And that these allegations are pretty much true,
He doesn't even let his parents know that he's in Detroit when they're clearly from Detroit. But he goes out and he parties and the thing is I don't think they totally make him out to be a really bad, creepy guy, but he gives that same explanation that most of these Me Too guys do, where they have talked a woman into having sex. And it's always that story like, well, at first she was saying no, but then I talked her into it,
Yeah, she
and
needed
from their vantage point, it feels like
nonsense.
Yeah, from their vantage point, as they're telling the story, they feel like they didn't do anything wrong, and so like listening to that one side, and you never get to hear the other side. You get like, okay, this guy is not a great guy by any means, but he's not like a horrible beast at the same time too.
So it's kind of revealed that because there's like a homeless guy outside of the house who kind of explains, kind of like is sort of the expository guy who kind of pulls her aside and explains that there was a guy, and then they do a flashback that is super cool of like that, because they go to that old Detroit neighborhood, like in the, I guess it would be like in the 70s.
Yeah.
And it's cool that this movie's made in Detroit, being that we live so close and do a lot of work there.
I'd like to go visit that area actually, because I visit movie locations.
The guy explains that like the dude lived in this house. He was a real jerk. He kidnapped this woman and brought her back, and then basically had this dungeon in the basement and sort of like assaulted her repeatedly, and that kept going. And then there was babies, and then they kept going, and there was baby, and it basically just became like a complete.
Well, he had sex with the babies. There's multiple generations of babies he had sex with, and that's what Mama is at the end, is like this distorted human. But
she's like, and that's the thing about this monster. It's like how Frankenstein's monster has like this big heart. Like she really just wants to mother.
Yeah.
The Georgina character. Like she just wants to be that mom. Like she's not really she's a very protective, like primal instinct of like motherhood,
Yeah.
So
and obviously afraid of men.
And clearly, well, yeah. And so then the other thing that happens is you discover the dad. They find the dad in the bed. Justin Long finds him, and he's kind of running around, and who's like the architect of this monstrosity mess thing, and the guy ends up blowing his own brains out right in front of Justin Long.
Well, it's because Justin finds these videotapes of all the things that happen in that room with the video camera and the bed and the bucket, and so
that's a great. Just the way they show his face.
Justin Long feels that this character.
The character's name is Frank, by the way.
Yeah, Frank. His name is Frank, but Frank doesn't talk at all. He's just sitting there, and he's like motioning for a bottle of water and all that kind of stuff. And he winds up. Justin thinks that Frank is a victim to this monster, and this monster is holding him hostage. And so Justin says, "I'm going to get the cops here, and they're going to swarm the place." And that's when Frank realizes, I've got all these videotapes here. Yeah. I'm going to go to jail, And so that's when he takes the gun, and Justin thinks he's going to shoot him, and Frank blows his brains out. Yeah. So it's done really well. I mean, even with that whole gun thing, you do think, oh, he's going to shoot Justin.
Yeah, like everything is kind of like, I won't say a red herring because that makes it cheap. It's just like a misdirect, like a head fake.
Yeah, all the time. Yeah.
And it's not even like obvious head fakes where it's like, he's going to do this. He didn't. You just you let yourself believe something else is going to happen. And then you're foolishly like, yoink.
There is no predictability in this movie at all. There isn't anything that you think you don't go into it thinking, oh, I know how this is going to go. And even when it comes down to the scenes, you don't know how it's going to go.
So the movie ends up at kind of this final set piece where they're running from Mama. She's chasing them. And they end up, Georgina Campbell climbs this water tower with Justin Long.
Well, that's when you really learn what a dirtbag Justin Long is, because he winds up using Justin Long winds up using Georgina as like bait to like get the monster to go away. Basically, takes the ball and throws it so the dog will go chase the ball. That's what he does with Georgina off this water tower, throws her off the water tower, and Mama, being the mother being protective of her,
maternal instincts kick in,
falls after her, and I don't know, through the act of magic, I guess, I don't know, lands and cushions her blow and saves her, which is nice. But then when Justin goes down, checks and see if either one of them are alive. Georgina is still alive. And he's like, oh, he's like, oh, you know what? Oh, I'm so grateful that you're alive.
I didn't have a choice.
You slipped. You were slipping, and I went to go. I tried to help you, and you fell. Like he's trying to like manipulate her right there on the spot.
So gross. Yeah.
And Mama comes alive and pushes his eyeballs out and kills him. And
in a fantastically gross way. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was gross. And then like pops his head open. And Georgina, as an act of mercy, takes a gun and shoots Mama in the head. But Mama is okay with it because she knows that her life is a mess. She doesn't want to live the way she is anymore. And she actually, in a really sweet moment, like kisses her forehead.
It's just heartbreaking. It's just absolutely heartbreaking. Yeah. It's up there with like Frankenstein as one of those kind of moments where you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of can be hackneyed, the like sensitive monster. He was just the monster in us all was really the monster, all that kind of nonsense. But like that scene was just, I mean, I teared up.
I mean, quite honestly, the Mama, screams at Georgina the first time that we see them before it cuts to the Justin Long shot. Georgina hits her with the car, for God's sake, but she still feels this maternal thing towards her, which is surprising, I guess. She doesn't like, I guess Mama realized that Justin was a terrible person and tried to hurt them both, right?
And then kind of like in almost the most like Hollywoody part of the movie, finger quotations here on for those not watching, which I don't know why you would be, but is the Tess character Georgina Georgina walking down the street, kind of like limping, covered in blood, like triumphant ending kind of deal.
One thing we didn't talk about is it's in a terrible part of Detroit. So,
but see, that's the other thing though. That flashback scene with Frank.
Yeah,
the city's like, they're not the city. The
neighborhood
you
see
is
the
like
decay.
Beautiful.
You see the decay that's happened. Yeah,
and that's kind of like another part of the story is the whole urban blight and urban decay, aspect of things. And like, while monsters are scary, real life is super scary too, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, so her, her riding off into the sunset, I guess, is her limping off into the sunset. I guess it's more the sunrise because the sun was coming up. I guess it does give you some kind of sense of like, okay, she's going to be okay. She, I don't know. You hope that she's going to be okay. She's still got to get through that terrible neighborhood, but at least it isn't dark anymore. So she's got that going for her. But yeah, she's going to be kind of messed up for a while. I don't know if she's going to rent an Airbnb anytime soon.
Yeah, and that's the other thing about her character's journey is like when you meet when you meet Bill Skarsgård, you think like, oh, like, okay, he's not a bad guy. Maybe they're going to have like a relationship. This is going to be great for her because she goes to that job interview and all this stuff. So you think, oh, her life's cool. And then at the end, she's got nothing and Bill's head is flat and the whole thing is. So I want to talk real briefly about some of my favorite, why this movie is different than other movies I've seen. And that is the way that the story is told. The story itself is, I mean, pretty unique, but I mean, I never knew it was going to happen, but I think a monster in the basement ultimately is what we're talking about. But I loved the smash cut to Justin Long, and that the disorienting, where are we going now kind of, and then kind of starting from Z back to the middle of the alphabet in the way the story is told, coming back to Detroit from his aspect. I also loved the idea of his character being by far the most evil thing, even though it's Justin Long's, which by the way, he's like in his mid 40s, like, but he has that baby face. Yeah. I can totally relate. But yeah, so, I love the way that his character really was the ultimate monster or whatever. And I did love the whole idea of the urban blight and the family dynamic of the whole thing being sort of the backdrop. I just thought it was superbly made and well done. I don't know if I would give it a rating like 1 to 10. I can't really do that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not very good at that either. I mean, I always seem to rate movies on whether or not I'd watch it again.
Yeah.
No.
Which we've revealed is a yes.
Yes, for me. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it because it wasn't predictable. I enjoyed it because I liked all the characters. I mean, even the
that's
bad
the other
ones.
thing too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
even the small ones.
I loved how it was pretty much a linear story except for the one flashback that takes place, and I like movies that jump around, but sometimes it gets a little tiresome to keep track of. Well,
it can be a trick. It can be like look at me, like gymnastics, like, oh, look what I can do. It's super like, like muscle camera action. And it's like, tell me a good story.
I like how, and this is more of a modern filmmaking technique these days versus like, say, a couple decades ago. They would always have to tell you when a flashback, like you think, go back to the 70s or whatever. They would say 10 years earlier or whatever. And they don't do that now. They just flashed and you figured out. So even in this film, when they do the flashback, it happens suddenly. And you go from this kind of, disgusting looking neighborhood that the house is in, which, by the way, the house is very clean, is clean looking. Even in this disgusting neighborhood, the house is still relatively pristine looking. It looks relatively clean. There's a little dirt on the door, but it's not like the rest of spray painted houses and burnt down and all this kind of stuff. But all of a sudden, this quick cut, they fall down in the pit. Justin Long and Georgina is down in the pit, and all of a sudden they cut to this flashback. And again, it's kind of startling. You don't know what's happening, but it's very clean and bright looking, almost Tim Burton-ish. It's got
the film stock is different, like the treatment of the film.
Yeah, they've got it's almost a 4:3 ratio kind of thing going on.
And the color saturation is more.
Yeah, it's real bright, and it's like a very Tim Burton. I think almost Edward Scissorhands kind of neighborhood. It's like very clean, and they've got this really great shot of him walking out and getting in the car and this really fluid motion driving down the street. One shot. And it feels so unnatural from everything that we've seen. Everything else has been, camera cuts. This is one giant long shot. And then it goes into he's in the store, and he's again, one shot following him. And it thematically, it feels completely different at that point. And then you're like, what is this? You get it's a flashback because I can tell they're playing 80s music on the radio. They're talking about the Reagan era in the news. And you get it. It's a flashback. But it's like, this is a flashback of what? I don't get it. And for the most part, it seems okay. Even in this flashback, you see the guy kind of following the woman. He goes into the house, but nothing bad happens. And you wonder, what does all this mean? Later, it's explained. And I love that. It's almost a movie that you could watch and then go, what was that scene in the middle about? I get it, but nothing really happened. And it's because it's explained later at the end, like who that guy was. This is his house. This is what he did. And then you understand what that scene means. It's scary. It's a scary thing.
And you see that he's like, they kind of set him up to be sort of the manipulative, psychotic, guy who's like going into homes. I mean, he's very dark and evil. So it was great.
Yeah. Well, and he goes into the home and he doesn't do anything to the person, but what he does do is unlock a window. And that's the big thing of that whole scene is he unlocks a window. It's very minimal. He goes click. And it like if you blink, you would have almost missed it. But that was the whole point of that scene. At what he did, he unlocks windows. He goes in at night and gets women and brings them back to his dungeon. So scary. I mean, the thought of that is scary in itself. Even though that's something that just plays out in your mind, it's never really shown on screen at all. Yeah, I really enjoyed this film, and I would recommend it pretty much to anybody that likes thrillers and horror films.
Masterclass in horror, I would call it.
Yeah, this is such a great.
It's like the next evolution to me of storytelling in horror, because it's like prestige-y, but also trashy, and also horror, like monster movies, and it's just got it all. So.
I love monster movies. I mean, that's what I love, but I love them. I love when they're done well and not sloppy. And it's the whole concept of, the shark didn't work. So we didn't get to see the monster very much. And that played on your imagination. That's what I love about the movie Alien, is that you don't see the monster all that much. And it's a dark house, a dark ride, like at an amusement park. You go in, you don't know what to expect. And it's more of the things that you don't see that kind of gets you kind of nerved up. And that's what I loved about this film, is that it doesn't give you a whole lot. You have to kind of put things together, and the things that happen, you're just like, oh my God, this dark room. Oh my God, the camera in the bed. Oh my God, this tunnel that goes to God knows where. That all stuff is scary. I loved that they pulled that off so well.
One of the things that I loved about this movie too is you have a real sense of place. Like, in other words, you understand where you are in the house. And I don't mean but you understand you're in the basement, or where you are in the basement. Things like that he did on such a small budget, and probably one set that he just rearranged. But
and I have to add this. Another thing that I like about it is all the characters' actions were believable. Sometimes horror movies, there's always like, why would she go in that room? Well, she's locked in the basement. I mean, and she doesn't even enter the dark part of that basement for quite a while there, and she walks up and goes, nope. And I just thought, that's exactly what we would do. Yeah. We would just go in. Now, if it was your traditional, off the shelf horror film, the woman would go in, without even thinking about it. And I loved that's not what happened here. She took her time.
Yeah, and also like the door jams and you can't get out. And the second time she gets a bite at the apple, she stops the door.
Yes, she
things
learned
that you
from it. Yep.
would do like as a human, you'd adapt and react. So.
Yeah, where like in a traditional horror film would be like the door would shut again. You'd like,
it happened again.
Heck?
Yeah,
what the heck, exactly. Lady? And then she goes get the chair, and it's all great.
I like when writers give their characters brains, give them reality, like you're saying, but also they don't treat the audience like dummies. I feel like that's very good. All right. Did you want to mention anything else about this movie before we wrap this conversation up?
I say, if you like horror movies on any level, if just even, like a simple horror movie, say like if you like say the original Psycho, which I'm a big fan of, I think you would love this movie. It's not, the title is off-putting because no one really knows what barbarian really means in the movie. So
I don't think anyone's listening to this podcast who hasn't seen it already.
Sure. But if you think about it, barbarian really doesn't mean anything.
You want to know why? Because it's on Barbary Street.
That's what I thought too. But I guess someone also pointed out if you rearrange all the letters in Airbnb, it spells that too. So
that's a good one. All right, I didn't.
And the director, I read a little thing about the director. The director said he just thought it was an interesting title. And
I heard an interview with Zach Cregger, and he said that too. He's like, it just sounds cool. I'm like, he's right. It does. Yeah. Okay, let's switch gears here. And I'm going to get on my soapbox for a minute and get on my corner.
What do you mean corner?
Well, I think each of us should have our own little kind of a little play area for us to talk about things that we're listening to, watching, doing, whatever it is. So,
all right.
It's the end of 2022. I would like to talk about my favorite TV shows of the year. I'm just going to do a top 5 because I watched everything, and I would be here for like an hour if I did.
Yeah, you're like a TV guy. I'm not so much a TV guy.
You watch way more movies than I do, although I watch a ton of movies, but I watch everything that goes across my screens.
Nice.
So, all right. So these will be a top kind of loose 4, and then number 1 we can discuss.
Okay.
Number, I guess, 5 would be The English with Emily Blunt. Super great Western. You should check it out. It looks like a spaghetti Western.
I saw an ad for it. Yeah, it looked interesting. Okay.
Phenomenal. Beautiful. Great story.
Okay.
We Own This City, starring John Bernthal, made by
guy
George
from
Pelecanos.
Walking Dead. He was in Walking Dead. Yeah.
That's right. He was the best part of Walking Dead in those seasons, I thought. But he's a great character. Made by David Simon and George Pelecanos, super hard-boiled, this is Baltimore now cop thing, and you follow the rise of this character, Wayne Jenkins, and you find out what happened to him. It's great. Slow Horses, love this show. It's kind of a modern take on almost like a modern what if James Bond and his team were a bunch of total screw-ups, It's like the MI5 agents that were like way off the map. And so they get put in this place called Slough House, and things happen in London. It's super cool. Tons of intrigue. I loved it. And Gary Oldman is the best character on TV right now.
I like Gary.
White Lotus, season 2, kept up with what season 1 did. Probably even surpassed it. It's got Aubrey Plaza. It's got everything you'd want in a TV show. Beautiful vistas in Sicily. Great stories about people coming to this hotel called the White Lotus. And kind of what happens to their characters along the way. A little bit of intrigue, a little bit of mystery, a lot of relationships. It's a great show. My top 2 are tied, but I'm going to say this one so you and I can talk about my number 1. Number 2 would be The Bear, which
I started watching that because of you. Yeah.
Good Lord, I love that show so much. If you ever worked in a kitchen, that's exactly what it's like working in a kitchen. When it hits the fan, you're off and running, and you get in the weeds and you're done. It's so good. Plus the family drama. I totally dug it so much. The characters are great, and I just love the acting. Thought it was phenomenal. All right. My number 1 show of 2022 is, and you're going to be very happy with me here, Star Wars dork, Andor. Tony Gilroy finally figured out a way to make a Star Wars property that doesn't involve a Jedi, doesn't involve a Skywalker, doesn't have any of the trappings that we've been kind of stuck with for the last whatever, but still pushes the ball down the field, tells a great story about how the Empire, why the Empire was so bad is the main reason why I feel that show's great.
Yeah.
But also how we got to the point where the Death Star blew up. And the rebellion became the rebellion
with Rogue One, because this leads into Rogue One. Yeah.
So that's my top 5, and Andor being number 1. What did you think about Andor?
As you know, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I mean, Star Wars, the movie is, if I have top 5, movies, Star Wars will always be my number 1. I've enjoyed everything actually so far, and I'm not one of these. I go into things blind and just love it just because it's Star Wars. Because there's some Star Wars things I'm not a fan of. Like I don't get into any of the cartoons and all that stuff. It's too much for me. I can enjoy these other. I have enjoyed these other TV series. I love Mandalorian. I enjoyed Boba Fett. I enjoyed Obi-Wan. I didn't feel like the stories there were very meaty, but I enjoyed it. And it's what people are calling fan service. A lot of Disney's throwing a lot of fan flashbacks to this Star Wars movie and that Star Wars movie, and a little prop from this or a little location from that. I love all that stuff. I mean, so that's one thing about Andor that doesn't really happen much. And I get it. They're trying not to do that, like you said. They're not tying in things like Jedi or Skywalkers or anything has anything to do with anything that we've seen before. Actually, the first 3 episodes of Andor, you don't even feel like you're watching a Star Wars show. I mean,
sometimes you have to remember during the whole thing until you get towards
the end. All of a sudden, a stormtrooper goes by, and like, oh, okay, that's it. We're in Star Wars land.
There are a few little Easter eggs in there, like Luthen's art gallery has a lot of like curios from Star Wars times past.
Even Indiana Jones. I mean, there's the Shakara, whatever those stones are from Temple of Doom.
Shakira, these hips don't lie, man.
Yeah, yeah, those stones lie though. But I find the whole thing slow. I find it. I know it's deliberately slow. They're trying to pace this in a way that feels more adult, I guess. But I think it's almost unnecessarily slow. Like if you go away, like what happened in 12 episodes, or is it 10 episodes? What actually happened in 10 episodes? It's hard to really say. I mean,
yeah, the first 3 are definitely an uphill, but I loved them, but I thought it was definitely an uphill walk.
Yeah.
But the way that it's kind of broken into 3 sections, you've kind of got the middle section of the prison, and again, we're spoiling stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then the prison
without
break,
saying too much. Yeah.
And then the kind of the end feature with the funeral, and I thought that. So for me, I thought that there were some scenes in this that were some of the best Star Wars thing ever. The Luthen speech. The end speech, the funeral dirge. I just thought it was like, as an old guy watching Star Wars, I'm kind of tired of like porgs and Ewoks and stuff. Like I want to see a little more, but I love that universe very, very much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's like made for people who watched the movies in the theater when they were little kids. So.
Yeah. Like I said, it feels more adult-ish.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's definitely. Like, I don't think most kids, I mean, even though, my 13-year-old has watched every episode, I don't think he goes away excited about each one, but I am looking forward to the next season, the actual bridge between this whole, prelude to what's going to happen prior to Rogue One. And I love seeing the evolution of Andor himself, Cassian, because he's kind of a hardened guy by the time you get to Rogue One. So he's a
nice broken man kind of by the time Rogue One happens.
And you can see why as the show evolves. So that's my there's honorable mentions galore, but those are my top 5 that I just thought were lights out this year. And so that's my corner. You're up, Todd. I think my corner is going to be about, believe it or not, movies I like that hardly anyone has heard of. How's that for a corner?
You're not going to start with Star Wars, are you? Because
No. I mean, I could. I just saw a movie this weekend that is kind of Star Wars related, but I won't. I'll talk about that another time. This is a movie that came out in 2019. It actually stars Helen Hunt. But the movie's called I See You, not like ICU, but ICSEEYOU. It's this interesting little story of, it seems almost like a demonic kind of occurrence that's happening in this house. There's strange things that are happening in this house. Things are moving in the house. Like there was, it's something on the table there, and then when they go to look again, it's moved. There's noises that are happening in the house. It feels like this is something supernatural is going on. And as the movie, I can't even talk about it too much because there's a point, much like when we were talking about this movie, what's the movie? Barbarian. When we were talking about Barbarian, where it makes that drastic cut to Justin Long. It does something very, very similar in this movie. It actually takes you to why things are happening odd in this film. Like, bam, it takes you right there. It completely changes the narrative and shows you what's going on. And then the two things wind up, what's going on in the supernatural feeling world and actual what's happening in this house. The two worlds collide, and it's a very well told story. I highly recommend it. I can't even say too much about it because if I do,
I haven't. You told me about it. I want to see it, so don't.
Yeah, it's a great little film. I will say Helen Hunt looks rather old in it. I was shocked at how old
she committed
is.
the sin, the ultimate sin of living several years.
I know. Yeah, but I just maybe that's why she hasn't been acting too much. It has a very low budget feel to it. Anyways, I would highly recommend it. I believe it's on. Let me see. It's on Amazon Prime. It comes with your subscription, so it's not like you have to pay for it.
No free ads.
No ads. But I would go out and see that film. You'll love it. You'll love the whole ride.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So that's it. Eric, we did our first show.
We did it. What do you want to talk about next time?
Well, it's a sequel that came out this year, a big anticipated sequel. And we'll have to see what our reaction is to it. How about Top Gun? Top
Gun. Let's see if it's worth all the hype.
It's Top Gun Maverick, isn't it? Top Gun Maverick or whatever?
Top Gun Maverick. I don't believe Top Gun : Maverick. I
don't know that there's not Maverick's colon. So it's, all right. Yeah.
Well, that's a different movie that I'm not watching. But yeah, so next time let's talk about Top Gun Maverick and whatever else we can think of. Maybe get into some music, get some more TV in there, and we'll continue this chat here in the Media Tavern.
Sounds good.